Today we're talking with author John Mayer. John, tell us, how did you get interested in writing fiction?
Well, Mallory, I was trained as a hardcore researcher and scientist in my doctorate and medical program at Northwestern University. And for years, I would pump out scientific articles. I think at a certain point I had 60 scientific articles and nonfiction books, all to help families and individuals in difficulty. And I turned around at some point and said, who's reading this stuff? It's either other professionals or the scientific community. It wasn't the families that I wanted to reach. So I started to write fiction to really reach families with some of the messages that I think are wholesome and good.
Excellent. So tell us, how do you pick your favorite fictional topics? Meaning, how do you find the inspiration? Because I think the storyline of a child serial killer in An Anger at Birth is rather an atypical topic.
Well, I think you're asking two questions. I think one is, how do I pick my topics? And I think, like a lot of writers, these stories just come to my head. And it always has, even before I started to write fiction. Everything in life to me seems to be a story, and that makes a good idea, etc., etc. But specifically, Anger at Birth, this is really a compilation of many of the kids that I have helped in my clinical world, in my professional doctor world.
Great. So what do you feel makes you unique as an author of fictional thrillers and romantic suspense? Because both are rather crowded fields.
I think what makes me unique is that my writing moves quickly. You're engaged from the beginning, and you keep engaged until the end of the story. I'm a storyteller. I don't know if people will find this to be high literary writing, but I want to tell an exciting, engaging story, and I think that marks my writing.
Excellent. I understand that you also write screenplays. Tell us, what's the difference between writing a novel and writing a screenplay from the writer's perspective?
It's exciting because screenplays are a whole different animal as a writer. We need to condense in our writing sometimes things that take us a whole chapter, 20 pages, down to 1 page. So it's much more condensed writing. It's very action and dialogue driven. I find it very natural for me because I write my books that way as well.
John, have you always known that you'd like to be a writer?
That's a funny and interesting question because I look back and I wrote my first novel when I was 16 or 17 years of age. It's still in a file cabinet from an old IBM typewriter or whatever used in those days. And one of these days I'm going to go back and take a peek at it if I have the courage and see what it looks like. So I guess the answer is yes.
Great. So tell us, what do you think makes a great novel for the reader?
Well, as I said before, I think, and that's the way I write, I think it's fast-paced, I think it moves along. It's engaging from beginning to end. I get very bored with novels that take a couple of chapters, maybe even longer, to describe what I almost think is a nonsensical part of the story.
Interesting. So who or what do you read the most and why? What do you enjoy?
Well, one of my all-time heroes, of course, is Caleb Carr. The book, The Alienist, always spoke to me, and I think he's a brilliant writer, and I like how he weaves history into his writing. So I like him a lot. I like a lot of popular fiction, and so I'll absorb many, many things. Again, as long as it engages me from the beginning and moves along and holds me up until that last page.
Thank you for your time today, John.
Thank you, Mallory.